Well, he's pretty quiet. I mean, I think what he does is he just pretty much lets you feel comfortable enough in yourself to just go.
Everyone remembers the jokes. Everyone remembers Shirley. After all these years, people still come up to me and quote that line. They always want to know if Leslie was really that funny in person. The truth is, he was funnier. But there was a side to Leslie that only those of us on set, in the middle of that brilliant chaos, ever got to see. For decades, I've shared the funny stories, the ones everyone expects. But today I want to share the man I knew, the friend, the professional. The truth of our time together is more than just a punchline. It's a story of respect, of shared absurdity, and of a kindness that has stayed with me all these years. Today, I want to tell you about the Leslie Nielson I was lucky enough to call my friend. It was 1980. The movies were filled with gritty dramas, soaring sci-fi epics, and the last of the disaster movie craze. Comedy was mostly situational, character-driven, or built around famous comedians. And then, from the minds of three filmmakers from Wisconsin, David Zucker, Jim Abrahams, and Jerry Zucker, came a film that didn't just break the rules, it rewrote the entire playbook of screen comedy. That film was Airplane. It was a full-frontal assault of puns, sight gags, and surreal jokes, all delivered at a relentless machine-gun pace. The film became a cultural phenomenon, a box-office smash that redefined parody for a generation. But its most radical, most brilliant creative choice wasn't in the script. It was in the casting. The directors, known as Zaz, made a daring decision to fill their absurd comedy with actors known only for their stone-faced dramatic work. Men like Peter Graves, Lloyd Bridges, and Robert Stack were hired not to be funny, but to be dead serious. At the center of it all were two key figures. The first was Leslie Nielson, a veteran actor with a resume packed with roles as stern commanders, detectives, and authority figures. He was known for his gravitas and his complete lack of comedic film experience. The other was Julie Hagerty, a relative newcomer from the world of New York theater, largely unknown to movie audiences. On paper, it made no sense. A dramatic journeyman and a theatrical ingenue, anchoring one of the most bizarre comedies ever made. Yet, there on screen, pairing as the earnest Elaine Dickinson and the deadpan Dr. Rumack, created pure cinematic magic. Their chemistry was undeniable, a perfect harmony of sincerity and absurdity. For decades, fans have celebrated the film, memorized its lines, and wondered about the magic behind the curtain. How did this unlikely duo create something so timeless? What was the real dynamic between the silver-haired thespian and the rising star? Now, all these years later, Julie Hagerty is ready to reflect. She will take us back to the set, beyond the iconic jokes, to finally open up about her personal memories of Leslie Nielson, the comedic genius who changed her life and comedy forever. Before she was the unflappable stewardess Elaine Dickinson, Julie Hagerty was a young woman with a dream, making her way in the vibrant world of New York City. Born in Cincinnati, Ohio, she'd started her career as a model, but the stage was her true calling. After moving to New York in 1972, she worked with her brother's theater group and honed her craft with celebrated acting coach William Hickey. She made her off-Broadway debut in 1979 and was just starting to make a name for herself. Film, however, was another world. She'd landed a small part in Bob Fosse's acclaimed 1979 film All That Jazz, a huge break, but her scenes were cut from the final print. By Hollywood standards, she was an unknown. I was a theater actress. That was my world, my comfort zone. Auditioning for a film, especially a Hollywood comedy, felt like stepping onto another planet. I remember getting the script for Airplane and not knowing what to make of it. It was unlike anything I had ever read. The jokes were relentless, one after another, on every single page. I remember thinking, can they even do this? Is this allowed? My background was in finding the subtext, the emotional truth. With this script, the text was the subtext, and it was usually a pun. When I went in to audition, I saw so many wonderful actresses, names people knew. Shelley Long and Sigourney Weaver both read for Elaine. I just went in there thinking of it as good practice. The directors, Jim, David, and Jerry, were so specific. They didn't want a comedic performance. They wanted the absolute opposite. They wanted me to play Elaine as if she were in the most serious, life-or-death drama imaginable. That was the note for everyone. Don't wink at the audience, don't signal the joke. It was a strange note, but it was also liberating. I knew how to play drama. So that's what I did. While Julie was a fresh face, Leslie Nielson was a Hollywood institution. Born in Canada, he'd been a working actor since 1950, appearing in over 100 films and 150 TV shows. He was the stoic commander in Forbidden Planet, the no-nonsense ship captain in The Poseidon Adventure, and a frequent guest star on dramas like Columbo. He was the guy you called when you needed a handsome, silver-haired actor to convey authority. But the Zazzy trio saw something else. They saw a closet comedian. They believed Nielsen's decades of playing it straight were the perfect cover for their humor. The more seriously he delivered their ridiculous lines, the funnier it would be. I don't remember the exact moment we first met, but I remember the impression he made at the first table read. It's an intimidating room to walk into. You have all these veteran actors, faces you've seen your whole life. Peter Graves, Lloyd Bridges, Robert Stack, and then Leslie. He had this incredible presence, a deep voice and a very distinguished air about him, and then he started to read. This man, who looked like a senator, would deliver these absolutely absurd sentences with the gravity of Shakespeare. I remember the line, "I've got to get to a hospital." And Robert Hayes' character says, "A hospital? What is it?" And Leslie, with this intense look on his face, says, "It's a big building with patients, but that's not important right now." The room just erupted. It was my first real glimpse into the method behind the madness. Leslie wasn't telling a joke. He was embodying a character so serious that the joke simply happened around him. He didn't reach for the laugh, he let the laugh come to him. I realized he wasn't just a dramatic actor they hired as a prop. He was the key. He understood the assignment on a molecular level. He was funny because he was so profoundly, deeply, and professionally not trying to be funny. And from that very first day, I knew I was in the presence of a secret genius. The mission on the set of Airplane Bourras was simple, yet revolutionary. As director Jerry Zucker told the cast, "Don't play it straight. Act as though you don't know you're in a comedy." It wasn't just a suggestion, it was a rule. The Zazzy trio had stumbled upon a 1957 melodrama called 0 Hour, a film so unintentionally hilarious that they bought the rights to it, lifting its plot and even some dialogue. The entire comedic structure of Airplane was built on that deadly, serious foundation. Every performance had to match that tone. No winking, no mugging, no acknowledging the absurdity. It was the hardest job I've ever had, and the most fun. The daily challenge was just keeping a straight face. We'd be in the middle of a take, a scene about imminent disaster, and Leslie would be doing his thing. He was the master. He could look you right in the eye with the most sincere expression and say something utterly insane. I think of the scene where he's trying to reassure me. I'm panicked, and he leans in and says, "This is a damn joke." My character is supposed to react with shock, but my real reaction, as Julie, was to bite the inside of my cheek so hard I thought I'd draw blood. You could feel the entire crew behind the camera shaking with silent laughter. We all thought it would be a cool little cult film, but we had no idea it would connect. A friend of mine saw the trailer and said, "Those are all the jokes, right?" So I just smiled and said, "No, just wait." While Leslie's on-screen performance was a masterclass in stoicism, his off-screen behavior was anything but. To cope with a long career of heavy roles, and probably just because he was a natural-born prankster, Nielsen came to the set armed with a secret weapon. his infamous handheld fart machine. Oh, the fart machine. That little whoopee cushion became the unofficial soundtrack of the movie. He had it with him every single day. He was a virtuoso with that thing. You'd be in the middle of a very quiet, very intense scene. The camera is rolling, and suddenly you'd hear this perp from somewhere off camera. You'd look over, and Leslie would just have this completely innocent, placid look on his face. Not a smirk. Nothing. Just pure deadpan. He used it to break the tension, but also to keep us on our toes. To remind us not to take ourselves too seriously. Robert Hayes told me that during one of their scenes, Leslie was saying his lines like, "Mr. Stryker, pra-RRP. Can you pra-RRP land this plane?" How Robert kept a straight face, I will never know. Even Kareem Abdul-Jabbar thought Leslie genuinely had some kind of intestinal problem for the first few days. It wasn't long before Leslie convinced almost the entire crew to get their own. The set became a symphony of flatulence. It was constant. It was juvenile. It was absolutely hilarious. It was Leslie's way of creating an environment where comedy could thrive. Nielson's humor wasn't limited to his gadget. In the scene where a passenger becomes hysterical, the script called for her to be shaken. But on the day, a line of passengers formed to take turns slapping her. It was Leslie who decided his character, Dr. Rumack, should throw in an extra. Slap for good measure. A perfect, unscripted moment of comedic escalation. That was his genius. He always knew how to heighten the comedy without breaking character. He understood that the joke wasn't just the line, it was the commitment. He was also incredibly generous. He knew I was new to film, and he became a sort of mentor in the art of deadpan. He taught me that the power was in the stillness, in trusting that the words were funny enough on their own. Your job was to be the straight man to the script itself. I remember his performance was full of little ad-libs of behavior, a slightly too long pause, a look of utter confusion. He was a closet comedian who had been waiting his whole life for this opportunity. He even told his agent, "I'll pay them to do the part." He knew it was the role he was born to play. The on-screen chemistry between Julie Hagerty's Elaine and Leslie Nielsen's Dr. Rumack is one of the film's greatest charms. It's not romantic, but a perfect comedic synergy. Her wide-eyed panic is the ideal canvas for his absurdly calm yet useless pronouncements. For over 40 years, people have wondered about their off-screen dynamic. Was it a close friendship? A mentor-student relationship? The truth, as Julie reveals, is a little bit of all three. People have often asked me about my relationship with Leslie, sometimes with a little wink, as if expecting some juicy story. The truth is much simpler, and I think much more wonderful. Our on-set relationship was one of immense mutual respect and a shared understanding of the bizarre, beautiful world we were creating. He was a mentor in many ways. I was young, just 25, and still finding my footing. He was this seasoned veteran. He never once made me feel like the novice. He treated me as an equal, a comedic partner. He taught me so much, not through lectures, but just by example. I learned about stillness from him. I learned that you could be profoundly silly while being utterly professional. But it wasn't a stuffy kind of mentorship. It was more like we were co-conspirators. We were both in on the same magnificent joke. We found a rhythm together very quickly. My character's job was to be the emotional, frazzled center, and his job was to be the voice of insane authority. My panic fueled his deadpan, and his deadpan made my panic funnier. We didn't need to discuss it. We just felt it. This unspoken. Chemistry is on full display when Ted Stryker has a panic attack, and Elaine rushes to Dr. Rumack for help. The scene is a rapid-fire exchange of questions and increasingly unhelpful answers. I love thinking about the scene where I run to him after Ted starts to freak out. We filmed in a real airplane cockpit. It was tight and hot. I rush in, and my lines are all about urgency and fear. "Doctor, you've got to come at once!" He's gone completely to pieces. And Leslie just stands there, this beacon of calm. He listens patiently and then asks the most logical yet unhelpful question. What is it? As if he's diagnosing a common cold. Working through that scene with him was like a dance. It was all about timing. I would serve him the panicked energy, and he would return it with this wall of serene absurdity. We were two instruments in their orchestra, playing our parts as precisely as possible. The truth of our relationship wasn't some hidden drama. It was the shared joy of that process. It was the fun of creating something so meticulously stupid. We were friends, yes, but more than that, we were partners in a very special kind of comedic crime. On July 2nd, 1980, Airplane was released. No one, not the studio, not the critics, and certainly not the cast, was prepared for what happened next. The film wasn't just a hit, it was a cultural event. It grossed over $171 million worldwide on a tiny $3.5 million budget. Phrases like "Don't call me Shirley" instantly entered the pop culture lexicon, but the single greatest transformation was not of a genre, but of a man. Overnight, Leslie Nielson, the 54-year-old dramatic actor, became an international comedy superstar. We knew we had made something special, but none of us could have predicted the explosion. It was overwhelming. Suddenly, this little comedy we had so much fun making was the biggest movie in the country. For me, adjusting to that fame was strange. But for Leslie, it was something else entirely. It was a vindication. It was the world finally catching up to the secret he'd been hiding for 30 years, that he was one of the funniest people on the planet. He had always wanted to do comedy, but said he never made the effort because he was a coward. Airplane didn't just give him a new career, it allowed him to be the person he was always meant to be in public. It was like a dam breaking. The success of Airplane completely reshaped Leslie's career. The Zaz team quickly cast him as Detective Frank Drebin in their TV series, Police Squad, which later became the successful Naked Gun film trilogy. The era of Leslie Nielsen, the serious thespian, was over. The era of Leslie Nielsen, the undisputed king of deadpan, had begun. It was an incredible joy to watch his star rise, to see the world fall in love with the Leslie that we had all come to love on set. We did Airplane 2, the sequel, together, and the dynamic was still there. But you could tell something had shifted. He was now Leslie Nielsen, comedy icon. We didn't see each other as often after that. Our careers went in different directions. But whenever I would see him on screen in a Naked Gun movie, I would just smile. I'd see him playing Frank Drebin, bumbling through a crime scene with that same earnest expression, and it felt like seeing an old friend succeed. He wasn't just playing a character, he was playing Leslie Nielsen. I remember running into him years later. The warmth was still there. The mischievous twinkle in his eye was still there. And yes, he might have had a newer model of the fart machine. He had found his calling, and it was a beautiful thing to witness. Leslie Nielsen passed away on November 28, 2010, at the age of 84. The news was met with an outpouring of affection from around the world. Even in death, his humor endured. His chosen epitaph, etched on his tombstone, reads, "Let her rip," a final perfect punchline. But for those who knew him not just as a movie star, but as a colleague and friend, the loss was more profound. Beyond the whoopee cushions and the deadpan delivery, there was a man of immense warmth and quiet kindness. It is this side of Leslie Nielsen that Julie Hagerty holds most dear. When I heard that Leslie had passed, it was a strange and deeply sad day. Of course, the first things that come to mind are the jokes, the laughter, the sheer fun of it all. You can't think of Leslie without smiling, and that in itself is an incredible legacy. But after the memories, what settled in was something deeper. I started thinking not about the gags, but about the man behind them, the consummate professional. It's easy to forget how seriously he took the work. He was always prepared. He always knew his lines. He always treated every single person on set with the same level of respect. The humor was a bonus, but his foundation was pure professionalism. The memory that truly sticks with me is not from a hilarious take or an on-set prank. It's a quieter moment. It was a long day of shooting, we were all tired, and we had a few minutes of downtime. We were just sitting in our set chairs. There was no joking. He didn't have his fart machine out. He just turned to me and asked quietly, "Are you having a good time?" It wasn't a big, profound question, but it was so genuine, so kind. He just wanted to make sure that I, the newcomer on this crazy ride, was okay. In that simple question, I saw the real Leslie. A generous actor, but also a generous human being. That's the Leslie I think about the most. The legacy of Leslie Nielson is one of comedic brilliance. Roger Ebert once called him the Olivier of spoofs, a fitting title. For an actor who could find the sublime in the ridiculous, his work in Airplane remains a touchstone, a masterclass in how to generate explosive laughter from the most serious of performances, a timeless classic that works just as well today as it did decades ago. What do I miss most about him? It's a funny thing to think about. Of course, I miss his presence, that mischievous spark. But if I had to put my finger on it, I think what I miss most is the sound of us trying not to laugh. That shared, suppressed, vibrating energy on set. The feeling of being on the verge of breaking but holding it together for the sake of the joke. That was the magic. It wasn't just the laughter itself. It was the joy of creating it together. That's the memory I'll always cherish. The joy of trying not to laugh with my dear, dear friend, Leslie. Airplane created countless memorable moments. What is your favorite Leslie Nielson line or scene from the film? Share your favorite memory in the comments below. And for more stories about classic Hollywood and the legends who made it unforgettable, be sure to subscribe.